Hello, everyone. Thank you for participating in today's webinar by the Society for New Communication Research. For those that are unfamiliar with the Society for New Communication Research, it's a global nonprofit research and education foundation and think tank dedicated to the advanced study and latest development in new and emerging communication tools and technology such as social media, digital, and mobile, and their effect on business, culture, and society. On today's webinar, we have social media adoption among the Fortune 500. This webinar, we'll hear from Senior Fellow Nora Barnes, and also she is a co-chair of research at the Society for New Communication Research. Nora Barnes, besides her work with the Society, she's also a Chancellor Professor of Marketing and Director of the Center of Marketing Research at the University of Massachusetts at Dartmouth. She has worked for many national and international firms, and she works closely in businesses in the Northeast. This webinar, I just wanted to let you guys know and give you a heads up. It will be about an hour long. So if you have any questions, feel free to type it in the question box located on the screen. We'll answer as many questions towards the end of the webinar. I wanted to also let you know that slides are going to be available, and we'll send it to you after the webinar. I'm going to pass it on to Nora. Again, the webinar is about 45 minutes, and then we'll address any questions. And your screen, there's a chat box, and feel free to type us in any questions that you might have. Nora, I'll let you go and start the presentation and go through with your slides on social media adoption for the Fortune 500.
Thanks, Gina, and thank you all for attending the webinar. I love this study, and a lot of people are really excited about the findings of it because it shows these huge companies just really getting excited about social media, so it's kind of fun to present. So thank you for giving me an audience to present it to. Let's get right into it and see what we've got. I always like to start off with what we did and how we did it, because I want it to be really clear. It's the only way you can really compare studies, because certainly you'll see studies that say something that might not be exactly the same as the statistics we have. So I wanted to be really clear about what was counted and how it was counted. So we use a pretty simple procedure. For example, a company was counted as having a blog if it was a public-facing blog from the primary corporation, and there was a post in the last 12 months. Obviously now, we expect a lot more posts than that and a lot more frequently, and we did look at that. But we tried to keep our methodology consistent, and we've been doing these studies since 2008, and that's the formula we used then. So in order to be able to compare our results, we kept the same formula now. And the only thing I want to say is there are many examples of Fortune 500 companies who have subsidiaries who have bought companies. There's all kinds of legal agreements, very complex business arrangements, and so the cleanest way to do it was to look at the primary corporation. If they bought some company somewhere who happened to have a blog, that didn't count. It had to come from the primary corporation, so just so that was clear. So we started off with the home pages of the Fortune 500, and we looked for links not only to blogs but to everything else that we studied. And if we didn't find any that way, then we'd actually go through the site and do a keyword search. And if we didn't find what we were looking for that way, we'd come out completely and we'd use some search engine. It might have been Technorati for blogs, it might have been Google, and sometimes we found things that way. Exxon, for example, was very well hidden, and you can't really get to the Exxon blog unless you're out in Google and Google it that way. So it's a kind of a step-by-step process, but we look everywhere we can and as hard as we can to make sure that we've counted things that are out there. So the same methodology was used to find Twitter accounts, Facebook pages, Google+, Foursquare, Pinterest, YouTube, Instagram, and then LinkedIn. It was the first time we had looked at LinkedIn, and it was treated exactly the same way. So we always start off with their sites, and then we move around all over the place in search of whatever we can find. So I'm going to get right to the money slide. We'll look at this again later, and I know there's a lot on it. So I'm just going to take a quick look, but we're going to take each one of these individually. So we'll take a close-up look at everything. Instead of putting all the data from 2008 up, we did the last 3 years so that you could just kind of see the way trends were going. And so you'll see that with the Fortune 500, Twitter is increasing. And again, this is significant because the Fortune 500 do like Twitter. They actually like Twitter a little bit better than they like Facebook. And that flips for small companies. So when we looked at the Inc. 500, it was exactly the opposite. They prefer Facebook to Twitter. So this is kind of fun to look at, not only within this group, but when we look at them in comparison to other groups as well. So you can see that in both cases, both Twitter and Facebook, adoption has increased. You can see with YouTube, it's within 2%, and that's within the margin of error for the study. So I'm not reading too much into that. Google Plus is up a little bit. Blogs are down a little bit, and we'll talk about that. But the big news is everything to the right, and you'll see the huge jump in Pinterest, the huge jump in Foursquare, the huge jump in Instagram, and LinkedIn just totally dominating everything with virtually all of them having LinkedIn accounts right now. So we'll take this apart and we'll look at it along with some other really fun facts. But I just wanted you to kind of see it all together because it's kind of neat to look at the movement across these platforms. Blogs are where we began. We started doing research on social media in 2006, and our first study was on business blogs. So we've been watching blogging for a long time, and I did in this slide want to show you what it's looked like over time. Back in 2008, only 16% of the Fortune 500 were blogging, and again, it was higher for small businesses. The Fortune 500 have been slower moving into social media and really getting excited about it. So you can see that it's been incremental. We went in 2009 from 22% to 23%, and then it leveled off at 23%, and then it started to catch on, and it was pretty exciting to watch this resurgence, if you will, of blogging in 2012 and 2013, because blogging is our most mature social media tool. It's something that allows you ownership and allows you advantages that working on other platforms don't allow. And so it was kind of nice to see this movement. In 2014, we saw our first decline ever since we've been tracking, and it's a decline of 3%. And you'll all have to help me a little bit, too, on this. But my question is, have companies begun replacing blogging with newer communication tools? Does the introduction of Pulse in LinkedIn affect blogging? Does the fact that you can blog on so many other platforms influence the ownership of a dedicated blog? And I don't know the answers. I don't even know how much stock to put into a 3% drop. And so I'm kind of waiting until we do more studies and other studies to see what that means. But certainly it's a little bit of a red flag for me as a researcher. And yeah, I'm open to any suggestions anybody has about what might explain that, because I think it's interesting that we've done the exact same thing we've done for years now, and that's the first dip that we've seen. So this is kind of an interesting slide from that perspective. 157 primary corporations have a public-facing corporate blog with a post in the past year. So that's about a third of the Fortune 500. And again, this is down 3% from last year. So still, a significant number of companies blogging, but our first decline. And then when you look at who has a blog, it's kind of fun because these are the top 5 companies in the Fortune 500: Walmart, ExxonMobil, Chevron, Berkshire Hathaway, and Apple. And what you can see is only 2 of those 5 actually have a public-facing blog: Walmart and ExxonMobil. And this is interesting because ExxonMobil only joined the blogging ranks in the past year. They really were not blogging, but they do now have a blog. Chevron, Berkshire Hathaway, and Apple do not, and Apple is kind of famous for not using a lot of these platforms, so no real surprises here, but it's fun to look at. When you look by industry, it's kind of fun because there are always those industries that are never going to have a blog, and those include things like the tobacco industry. I mean, they're probably never going to have a blog, and they don't they don't have one now, and we don't think that they're planning to have one. But there are specialty realtors, and those specialty realtors include things like The Loft and Victoria's Secret and a lot of H&M and a lot of places like that. So that's not a surprise. They're very active with their engagement, very active. The food consumer products, you know, the Cokes and the Pepsis and the McDonald's of the world are blogging. Commercial banks do quite a bit of blogging with some really good advice on mortgages and rates and things like that. It goes all the way down. Actually, kind of a surprise that mining and crude oil would have any blogs at all, but they do have a few. When we looked at who had no blogs at all, it was pipelines, railroads, and tobacco. So that's kind of bringing up the bottom of the pile on that stuff. But kind of fun to see who's really out there and what they're doing with their blogs. As far as engagement goes, we looked at everyone who said they had a blog, and 78% of the blogs are actually current, and by that I mean a post within the last 30 days. They take comments, they have RSS feeds, they take subscriptions, they were responding to comments that had been left. So it was actually pretty refreshing to see that most of those that have blogs are very active and really using them for engagement and very dedicated to that. So I think those who have chosen to blog have taken it very seriously, and they're doing a really, really good job of it. We're going to switch to Twitter now. So we're going to look at the Twitter platform, and we have 413 of the Fortune 500. That's 83% that actually have accounts with a tweet in the past 30 days. This is up 6% from last year. Now, Twitter has been a favorite of the Fortune 500 right along. They've always out-tweeted the Inc. 500. So Twitter has been something that the Fortune 500 have been comfortable with from very early on and have made use of. Again, when we looked at who doesn't use Twitter, you see tobacco, pipelines, forest, and paper. You know, no surprises again. And the Fortune 500 actually fall into about 72 industries, and some company from all of those 72 industries do actually have a Twitter account. So there was some Twitter activity, even though it's very, very little in some of those other companies that I mentioned, like tobacco and forest and paper. But there might have been one company out there that went with it, and that was kind of fun to see. So across industries, we have Twitter representation, but very, very little of it in some industries and more of it in others. If you want to look at the top companies and their tweeting, we can see that in the top 10, we have Walmart, again, being very active in social media, but also, of course, as you all know, Ford, prolific, and GM and GE. Chevron actually will tweet, although they won't blog. Same thing with Phillips 66. And ExxonMobil getting active in social media. So really fun to see those. The do not tweets, you'll see a pattern here. Berkshire Hathaway and Apple not using these platforms. Valero not using this platform as well. So again, it's very different, and I think, again, we should talk about culture at some point, company culture, company size, company history, and I think all of that comes in play when we look at slides like this. By industry, again, you can see consumer products, food consumer products, and they're tweeting away. As a matter of fact, out of the 13 food companies that were on the top 500, 13 out of the 13 are using Twitter. So you can see really good use of Twitter. In banks, again, chemicals you wouldn't expect, but again, they're making good use of social media. When you get to mining, you can see that it drops off. So there is some change by industry with these. The most popular tweeters are actually Facebook is a prolific tweeter, and they also have the most Twitter followers. This is very ironic because Facebook has the most Facebook followers, and it has the most the most Facebook fans and the most Twitter followers. So Facebook has done a really quite incredible job of kind of owning both platforms. They're owning Twitter as well. Starbucks is one that always has a lot of followers, and no matter where you look, whether you look at fans or followers, you'll see some of these same companies. Whole Foods, Nike, Intel, these are companies that do a great job with engagement, and they do a great job whether it be on Twitter or on Facebook. You'll see these companies with lots of followers and lots of fans. So as models, they're very good to watch, and companies will always ask me what they should do and not do, and one of the things that everybody can do is certainly look at these and look and see how they're engaging people, the kinds of things that they're tweeting about, the kinds of things that they are posting, and I think that they make really great models. Just one little note before we leave this, and that's on the Nike angle. We just finished a study of millennials, and millennials will follow Nike more than any other company, and they also will fan or like Nike more than any other company. So Nike is doing a good job across age groups, and they're doing especially well with the millennial age groups. So that's new information we've just received, and I thought it would be interesting to throw that in. So the Fortune 500 on Facebook. So we're going to switch gears again, and we're going to look at Facebook. So we have 401 of the companies, or 80%, that are on Facebook, and this is an increase of 10%, a pretty significant bump up over last year. Now their Facebook usage is still a little bit lower than their Twitter usage, but you can almost see what's going to happen for next year. You know, the way that the trends are going, I think these are going to even off pretty quickly. It looks like they're getting better at being more comfortable with Facebook, and I think the increase of 10% over the past year certainly shows some excitement about moving into this platform. And these are, keep in mind, these are huge, huge companies that have been very, very cautious about their use of social media. We've been doing this for a long time now, and so we've watched these numbers creep up from some pretty low numbers. And now we have 80% of them on Facebook. And I know some of you are sitting there going, 80%, I can't believe they all don't have a Facebook page in this day and age. But yeah, that's something that we've watched and we continue to watch. But for this group, this 10% increase shows great enthusiasm, and it's actually exciting for us because that's a very big jump in a short time for them. So it's kind of fun to watch. If you want to know who the Facebook people are, the entire top 10 are actually on Facebook, including Berkshire Hathaway and Apple. So this is really shows the kind of the acceptance of Facebook among the top 10. And we're going to talk in a minute about the significance of the top companies and social media. Again, Facebook by industry. We've got chemicals and commercial banks and utilities and groups you would not expect, but you know, they have embraced this platform. They're using it. They seem happy with it. So there's, yeah, some really, really good excitement here, and it really goes across lots of industries that maybe we wouldn't expect. Here's the most liked companies, and if you can remember back to our followers on Twitter, you remember that Facebook had the most followers, and here it is that they actually have the most likes on Facebook as well. So kudos to them, because that's kind of, you know, it's kind of a big deal to be on the top of both. Coca-Cola does well, Disney does well, Starbucks does well. Walmart, McDonald's, these are companies that have really mastered the interaction and the engagement. If you look at any of these sites, you'll see so much going on. There are coupons, there are sweepstakes, there are posts, there are menus, there are new products, there are kind of updates, previews of things coming, lots of things that are very entertaining and make it fun to go and to interact with these companies. They've really done a very, very nice job of making that happen. The Fortune 500 on LinkedIn, I guess the question will be asked, why is this our first year looking at LinkedIn? And that's because for a long time people were telling us that LinkedIn was a recruiting tool, that LinkedIn was more of a professional network and not necessarily a social media tool. Well, that's all changed. We know that that's all changed. And we know that you can do so much more on LinkedIn now, and there are company pages and there's Pulse. And so we decided it really should have been looked at, and this year we did. And of course, by the time we got to it, everybody had a LinkedIn account. So the Fortune 500 certainly feel like this is a platform that they want to use, and they do use it for all the reasons that I cited. I mean, they do use it for recruitment. They do use it for professional connections. There are lots of personal networking that's done there as well, but we now see LinkedIn being used in lots more ways than was its original intention, and so we see a lot of Fortune 500 companies really enjoying that. When we look at YouTube, we see 67% of Facebook, and lots of them have dedicated channels. Some of them will just use them, as well as Vine too. Let me just say they use Vine as well. This is a decrease of 2% from last year, and I think that's because of the other video channels that are now available to them, including Vine. I think that we have companies like the coffee company that's big in the Northeast, Dunkin' Donuts, who has many, many excellent Vines on. Starbucks does as well. So you can see that video is something that the Fortune 500 do enjoy. They do like it. They do make use of it. Not necessarily always on YouTube, but we're seeing really no shortage of videos being produced by any of the Fortune 500. So it still seems to be a very active and vital vehicle for this group. There are 178 of the Fortune 500 who are on Pinterest. This is an increase of 36% from last year. This is huge, and we need to talk about it for a minute because this is not unique to the Fortune 500. We study colleges and universities. We study not-for-profits. We study small companies, small businesses, and we study the Inc. 500. Pinterest is gaining such traction across all levels, whether you study millennials or you study the general population. Pinterest is just huge, and it's huge for a lot of reasons. People have called it eye candy. It is a virtual catalog of anything that you might be interested in. For those looking for something simple like placeholders for Thanksgiving, there were literally thousands of ideas, all with beautiful pictures. And if you clicked on them, you could go immediately to the manufacturer's site and you could purchase them. So Pinterest has done a very, very good job of showing product, of cataloging product by interest. So the interest graphs have been able to be formulated, and we've been able to target people very nicely using Pinterest. Companies have now learned to create boards with their products on them because Pinterest is a huge vehicle in the social commerce arena. What we're seeing is that more social commerce is being conducted through Pinterest than any other site. And we think that that's because the ease of buying. We think that it's because you can very quickly click on a product and go to a place where you can purchase the product. And this is not yet true, although it may be shortly for other platforms. So I just wanted to pause for a second because I think we all have to just really kind of take a deep breath and look at this because, you know, if anybody wants to get stock, Pinterest is taking off. And this has been consistent. We've seen this over the last 2 or 3 years, and we see big jumps like this now, regardless of the platform that we're looking at. Google Plus is a whole nother story, and again, maybe you can all help me with this later because I don't know the explanation for it. But we did find 189 Fortune 500 companies that had Google Plus accounts. We also found an additional 93 that have not yet become active. So the company had opened a Google Plus account, but there was nothing there, and there had not ever been anything there. These were you know, I don't want to call them inactive accounts, but they certainly appear to be inactive accounts. This is not true when you look at Twitter. This is not true when you look at Facebook. This is kind of unique to Google+. So whether or not people, companies, have not yet figured out how Google+ fits into their social media plan, whether or not it overlaps too much with other things they're currently doing with other platforms, I really don't know, and I'm really open to some good suggestions. But the fact is that there are more empty Google+ accounts than there are any other kinds of social media accounts. So it's just what it is, and I'm happy to entertain anybody's theory on that. I'm not really sure how to explain it. Instagram's another one to watch. It's exploding, and not only with young people. We find when we study millennials that right now Instagram is their go-to, and they love it. We find it also with celebrities and with older people. People are doing everything on Instagram, whether it's posting or it's pictures or it's video. Instagram is huge now, and you can see that even with the conservative Fortune 500, it's up 11%. That's pretty significant. You don't see jumps like that typically with the Fortune 500. They have been very slow moving, and the bump ups have been very slow each year. So this is significant. Instagram and Pinterest are something to watch, as the Fortune 500 now seem to be thinking about moving in this direction. Now this is 20% of the Fortune 500, which is 100 companies, now have Instagram accounts. Foursquare. Again, this is a hard one to explain until I went back and really looked at it, because it didn't make any sense to me. We had an increase of 42% in Foursquare accounts, and I thought, okay, that doesn't make any sense at the corporate level. How does Foursquare fit into that? So I went back and I checked all the numbers, and these companies do in fact have Foursquare accounts, and their Foursquare accounts are filled in very much like Yelp or like the Yellow Pages. They have who they are, what they do. They have contact information. They have a map that shows where they're located. They have a list of their products. They have a link to their website. So somehow someone has decided to use Foursquare as a location page, almost like an advanced Yellow Pages, or like a Yelp situation. But if you look at any of these 254 companies that have Foursquare accounts, what you'll see is exactly what I just laid out. They have their names, they have their addresses, they have a map that shows where they are. Some of them have more than others, and some of them have some pretty neat things on their Foursquare page, lots of links to different things. But yeah, some of them you could check in at, some you could actually go to. For example, like Coca-Cola, if you went to Atlanta and you went to the Coca-Cola place, you could actually check in on Foursquare. But for companies that don't have any kind of visitation availability at their corporate sites, some of them still have Foursquare pages, and that's kind of the interesting part. So they're still getting out contact information, they're still getting out information, they're still getting out their locations, whether you can visit and get credit for that or not. So kind of a surprise for me in this study, and that's using a platform in a way different than I think is its intended use. So again, that's something that might be interesting to talk more about. I wanted to talk about rank, and I had mentioned before when we looked at the top 10 and how many of them were using certain things. Our studies consistently, since 2008, have shown that the top-ranked companies use more social media than the bottom-ranked companies. This continues to be true, and it doesn't matter if you look at blogging, if you look at Twitter, if you look at Facebook, if you look at Pinterest. You can take any platform that you want to, and you'll see more activity in the top 200 in the Fortune 500 than you'll see in the bottom 200. Now, I will say that as more and more companies get involved with social media, the difference is less, but the difference continues to exist. Now, of course, here's the chicken and egg. Are the top 200 more successful because they've mastered all of these tools? Or, do they have more money to hire social media specialists and to do more things with these tools? I don't know, and I certainly would love to hear all of your ideas. All I can tell you is we've been watching this for years, and for years this has been the case. I can guarantee you that there's more social media activity in the top 200 than there is in the bottom 200. And this is something that just is really interesting, and I didn't want to leave any discussion of the Fortune 500 without just making a note of this, because this is one of the few factors that you can see across the board with the Fortune 500. Again, this is what we've just taken apart. I wanted to repeat this slide because now that we've talked about everything, it's a little bit more fun to go back and look at it. So again, as I had pointed out in the beginning, Twitter and Facebook, they're still a little bit more partial to Twitter, but they always have been. If you look at the last 3 years, there was always more Twitter use than there was Facebook use, and that continues to be the case. The gap is getting smaller, though. You can see last year there was a 7-point difference between Twitter and Facebook use, and that's a 3% difference this year. So kind of interesting to note. I don't know what next year will bring, but they still prefer Twitter to Facebook. When you look at YouTube, a little bit of a decline. I'm not sure it's meaningful. Google+, I can't explain. I don't know what's going on with Google+. Inching up, but a lot of empty accounts. Blogging is one I'm very concerned with because I think as a mature platform which has a long and rich history and where you certainly can do things that you can't do anywhere else in terms of owning what you say. It's to me, I would hate to see that die out, and I'm hoping that that's not the beginning of it that we see, but you can help me with your thoughts on that. Pinterest, the huge jump. Foursquare, the huge jump. Instagram, the big jump. And, of course, the star of the show, LinkedIn, who has managed to collect almost all of the Fortune 500 as participants. So kind of fun to look at this at the end. But I wanted to show you one more thing because some of this is fun to look at in context with other companies. It's fun to look at the Fortune 500, but seeing what the Inc. 500 is doing and seeing we study both, I thought I would just throw that in so that you could see some comparisons. Now, just before we start, let me say that the Inc. 500 put out by Inc. magazine every year, and they are, by definition, the fastest growing small businesses in the U.S. So the fastest growing, it's all based on growth, where the Fortune 500 is all based on net worth. So it's the value of the company. So it's about money in the Fortune 500. It's about growth in the Inc. 500. So let's take a look. This is the blogging slide, and again, as I said, we've been studying blogging for a long time. So this has them side by side, so you can see what I've been trying to say, and that's that the Fortune 500 have always lagged behind. You know, they really have been laggards in the true sense of the marketing term, in that they wait, they look, they watch, they see, and they're very, very slow about moving ahead with these things. So you can see that it's been very slow movement with the Fortune 500. And with the Inc. 500, it's been different. So the Inc. 500 are up and down, and they've been blogging at 52% right now, and it's 34% with the Fortune 500. This is the Inc. 500 versus Fortune 500 and Twitter use. You can see that for both groups, they've increased their Twitter use. But again, Twitter use remains higher with the Fortune 500 than with the Inc. 500. So you can see that over time, which is some of the things that we like to look at, the trends. So we see that both groups continue to move towards Twitter and that the Fortune continue to favor it. With Facebook, the opposite, we can see that there's an increase over the past 2 years in both groups. I don't know why the blue bar that says 67, it looks shorter than the red bar that says 66. So I will apologize for that. The numbers are correct, and the numbers is what you should look at. 84% with Facebook account in the Inc. 500. So you can see that for the Inc. 500, the small, fast-growing companies, they're nimble, they really like Facebook, they're having fun with it. The Fortune 500 is just warming up and getting their feet wet and starting to figure out how to use it. So the highlights to me, when I look back at everything that I've said to you over the last 40 minutes, the highlights, I think Foursquare enjoys the largest increase in adoption. I think there are reasons for that, and I think they have to do with intent and usage, and I think that has to be looked into a little bit more. Pinterest and Instagram certainly making a splash. Blogging down a little bit, YouTube down a little bit, and I think that both of those we can speculate about what's happening and why it might be happening. The Fortune 500 has consistently showed a preference for Twitter over Facebook. And the Inc. 500, the other way around. This continues. This has been the case. This continues to be the case. Kind of an interesting difference about who they are, really, and their own cultures. The use of LinkedIn is virtually universal. This is clearly a platform that provides undisputed utility. They told us that they use this to talk to vendors, to talk to customers. They use it B2B. They use it a lot for recruiting, for potential employees, and for job posting. So it's really become a platform that they use in a lot of different ways, a lot of multitasking going on this platform. In the end, these giant corporations are demonstrating an interest in experimenting with the new tools and vibrantly engaging their audiences. And I have not said that before because it just looks like now they are really out there. They are really embracing social media. They're having fun with it. They're definitely getting more comfortable with it. They're increasing their usage of platforms right across the board. And it's really fun to watch. It's exciting to see these huge classic companies leading the charge where they've been seemingly reluctant and on the sidelines a lot. So really, really fun for us to watch. I wanted to say thank you to everybody because I love sharing the results of our work. I think it's what a university should do, so I'm happy to do it. We did post a brand new study today, and it is on our website. So you can just use the front part of our website, and you can just go to umassd.edu. You can find us from there. We're at the Center for Marketing Research. It's the D for the Dartmouth campus. That's in umassd.edu, and you need to use that to get to us. But I thank you so much, and I think I'd love to talk to you and open it up for questions and chat. And any information you have that can help me explain all the things I couldn't explain, I'm happy to chat about. So thank you so much.
So thank you, Nora, for sharing the study on the Fortune 500. Some very interesting stuff. Again, I want to remind the audience, if you have any questions, there's a question box located on your screen. Feel free to chat in your question. Just type it right in, and we'll address them. I do have a question, Nora, for you on blogging. And did you rely on data only from Blogger, or did you use like Tumblr, WordPress, or other blogging tools when you looked at that?
It was all blogging platforms. We asked if they had a public-facing corporate blog. It didn't matter to us what form that took.
Okay. And we know that today we're focusing on the Fortune 500 companies. But I have someone that's curious, what platforms have you noticed as most used by nonprofits or political committees? And if so, any notable changes or emerging tools?
You know, that's a great question. We actually stopped studying not-for-profits because they were at almost 100% with every tool you could name. The not-for-profits figured out a long time ago, and by that I mean in the last 10 years, that they could supplement their very limited budgets and that they could do a number of things using social media that would not cost them any money. And so they very, very quickly learned about using using Facebook, using Twitter, using Instagram. They're prolific bloggers and posters. They use video. Their websites are full of storytelling and video. They are the pioneers of social media. If anybody is interested in companies that do social media well, go to any not-for-profit site. The not-for-profits are entrenched I can't even say what platforms they use more than others because they were at 97, 98% in everything we studied. So they're amazing adopters of social media, and they do it beautifully. They do it beautifully.
Well, thank you. Another question. I was wondering why certain companies do you think participate on Facebook and not Twitter? We're thinking of, I think you had a slide that showed gas companies, one where some of them posted on Facebook but not on Twitter, and vice versa.
Yeah, that's interesting to me too, that they still see the two as different in their minds, and it may be that Twitter is the easier of the two for some big companies that may not be ready for the activity level of Facebook. It takes a little bit more to have that Facebook site, to keep it up, to keep engagement going than it does to tweet. So for some of these companies, it's a choice that they've made about time. It's a choice that they've made about resources. And I think that there's still a very different vision about the amount of time and resources those two platforms take.
Mm-hmm. And a question on your Pinterest data is that most of the ones that reported using, is that more retailers have you noticed versus, let's say, other industries?
Yeah, it's huge with the companies that you could see were doing everything else, the consumer food products, the retailers, the specialty retailers, yeah, all on Pinterest. And, of course, all of the craft people, that's where you're going to see Joann's, and you're going to see Michael's, and you're going to see all the do-it-yourself. The TV shows, they're all huge on Pinterest because that's the audience. And the interesting thing and the driver is that it's a female audience. It's a 32 to 42-year-old female audience, which are the target for most household buying. So it's a great audience, and I think that's why other companies are now moving towards Pinterest, because the eyes that are looking at Pinterest are really the eyes that all of us want.
Okay. And just a reminder for those, the question box is located on the screen. We actually had a comment come in on the issue of Google+. I know, Nora, you also threw out some questions to get the audience, to participate. The issue with Google+ is that it's tied to their aggressive practice of automatically generating these accounts when you use Google. So it was just a little comment towards Google+.
Oh, well, thank you for that, too. Thank you. Yeah, it's really interesting because you don't see inactive accounts very much in social media anymore. So it's interesting to see that Google+ seems to be plagued by them.
Okay. We currently don't have any questions coming in right now, but I know, Nora, we just released your study on the millennials. So I just want to point out, did you want to share any of your highlights before we break off for the day today?
Oh, well, thank you for that. It would be fantastic to do that. Some of the highlights that you'll see in the millennial study are that Facebook is the most popular platform for them when they're looking for companies and brands. Not a real surprise, although they're telling us that Instagram is a close second. Nike, as I had said before, is the #1 brand that's followed and liked, which is kind of fun. We asked whether or not they would be likely to use buy buttons if those became available on Facebook or Twitter. If you could do something similar to Pinterest, and you could press a button and be taken to the purchase site. And we found that 35% of Facebook users said yes, they would be likely to use such a button, and 24% of Twitter users said yes, they would be likely to use such a button. So as far as I know, we're the only people that have done any research on buy buttons, and so I expect that that's a statistic you'll see quoted at some point down the line. Relative to all other platforms, Pinterest has the highest sales conversion rate. So those are some of the highlights. But millennials are a very interesting group, and they do things very differently than non-millennials. So it's kind of a fun study to read if you have any interest at all in social commerce, because they are the drivers of social commerce. They'll buy anything online through their phone that they can possibly get. So a really fun study too. I really enjoyed that one.
Thanks, Nora. I have another question. Any metrics to show the business impact of social media versus another examples like Facebook posting? Is it more effective to generate sales than, let's say, Twitter?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, the ROI is something that everyone asks about. And when we ask the companies themselves how they measure the effectiveness of their social media, they're still measuring it in terms of those metrics. They're still the most popular metrics for measuring the effectiveness of your social media. We are told from these companies are hits, comments, fans, followers, Google Analytics. So, you know, they're generally not using sales, but I think that's changing. I think companies are beginning to get more tracking software, and I think tracking is becoming more common than it's been, but a lot of companies still aren't able to make that connection between the like and the fan and the follower and the sale, and we're hearing that over and over again. So no, I don't have any other metrics, but from what I'm understanding, a lot of our companies don't have any other metrics just yet either.
Okay. Thank you, Nora. Again, I want to thank everybody for participating. If you should have any questions in the meantime, feel free to contact us. And, you know, Nora, again, thank you for your presentation. We'll send out the slides and a recording we'll have on the site for if anybody would like to go back. If you have any questions, I can be reached atghernandez@sncr.org. And Nora, would you like to share?
Absolutely. Feel free to email me. I'm at N for Nora, Barnes, B-A-R-N-E-S, at UMassD for the Dartmouth campus, umassd.edu. So I'd love to hear from everybody. I so appreciate your time. It's great.
Okay. And I hope everybody has a great week. And again, thank you for participating. Bye.